I never thought a bathroom could feel like a universe, but that morning, standing there with her, it did. The mirror reflected the sunlight, spilling in soft and warm, painting her hair in streaks of gold, and for a moment, I forgot where I was. She was leaning slightly against the counter, one hand resting near the sink, fingers lingering as though they hadn't yet decided where to go. Her eyes caught mine in the mirror, and I felt it, a pull I couldn't name. Not quite desire, not quite fear. Something in between. "Are you okay?" she asked softly, not looking at me, but at the space just past my shoulder. Her voice had that weight, smooth, careful, with a tremor I would later recognize as vulnerability. I nodded, though I wasn't. My hands itched to move, but I kept them folded in front of me. I could smell the faint scent of her perfume, something warm, earthy, almost like cinnamon in the sunlight, and it made my stomach tighten. She shifted, brushing her fingers along the edge of the sink. My eyes caught that movement, the small flicker of attention, and my breath hitched. I wanted to step closer, not for any reason other than to feel the heat radiating from her, even though we weren't touching yet. "I didn't mean to wake you," I said, though I had no idea if I actually had. My voice sounded small, unsure, and I hated that. Her lips curved slightly, a half smile, half question, and I realized she was studying me as much as I was studying her. The way she held herself, graceful, yet not untouchable, made the air between us heavier. My fingers twitched, wanting something I couldn't put into words. She glanced at me then, directly, and I felt my heart catch. There was a flicker in her eyes, recognition, maybe curiosity, maybe something more, but before I could decipher it, she stepped back just a fraction. That tiny space between us became a chasm I didn't know how to cross. The quiet of the room pressed in around us. I could hear the faint hum of the water heater, the soft rustle of her blouse as she moved. My senses were absurdly alert. Every exhale she took, every blink, every half-turn, felt amplified. I noticed the subtle warmth of her hand as it passed near mine, brushing the air between us, and it sent a shock straight to my chest. "I thought maybe I could help," I said, the words leaving my mouth before I could second-guess them. "If you need help with anything." The hesitation hung, unpolished, but she didn't laugh or look annoyed. Instead, she looked at me with something close to softness. For a heartbeat, the space between us was suspended. I wanted to reach out and let my fingers brush hers for real, not just in passing air, but I didn't. I couldn't. Something told me patience was a language she understood, and I wanted to learn it. Then, just as the tension seemed ready to spill over into unspoken confessions, the bathroom door clicked. Neither of us moved immediately, our eyes locked for an instant too long, before we both turned instinctively. The hallway was empty, but the sound was enough to make my pulse thrum in my ears. Her gaze flicked to the door, then back to me, and there was that smile again. Not teasing, not shy, something else. Something dangerous in its subtlety. Something that whispered promises neither of us dared voice yet. I swallowed hard, feeling the warmth of her presence linger like a second skin. And just like that, the universe of that small bathroom, the pull between us, was far from over. I kept catching myself watching her, even when I told myself not to. The way she moved around the kitchen that evening, careful, measured, yet with a grace that made the air feel charged, pulled at something deep in me. I wondered, not for the first time, how someone could seem so composed on the outside while carrying storms beneath the surface. She hummed softly as she washed the dishes, and the scent of her perfume mingled with the faint soap smell. My hand itched to brush against hers, but I stayed frozen in place, pretending to be absorbed in my phone. I knew she noticed, though. She always noticed. That flicker of awareness in her eyes when she caught me staring. It was both an invitation and a warning. I remembered a conversation, long ago, when she had admitted, almost in passing, that trust didn't come easily. "People disappoint you," she said quietly, and I had thought of the man she had once loved, someone careless with hearts. Her voice carried a vulnerability she rarely allowed to surface. That knowledge, her hidden softness, made the pull toward her even harder to resist. And yet, the risks lingered, unspoken but palpable. I was young, too inexperienced. And she, so much older, seasoned, aware of every consequence. Society would not look kindly on this. My own hesitation, my conscience, made my heart pound whenever our hands brushed by accident or when she lingered a second too long near my shoulder. That night, she walked past me, the heat of her body close enough that I could feel her breath. I caught a faint scent of vanilla mixed with something uniquely hers. I swallowed, aware that my pulse had picked up pace, aware that I was standing too close, yet incapable of stepping away. "You've been quiet," she said, voice low, teasing yet curious. "Thinking too much." I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "Maybe," I admitted, though the word felt like a whisper between us. "Or maybe I just noticed things." Her gaze lingered, and for a heartbeat, it felt like she was seeing more than I had intended to show. My fingers brushed the edge of the counter, just a little too close to hers. I wanted to move, to close the distance, but I didn't. I wanted her to stay within reach, yet I feared crossing some invisible line. She smiled then, soft and knowing, and leaned back slightly, letting her hand hover near mine for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. That small, electric pause, it said more than words ever could. The moment stretched, charged with a tension neither of us could name. And in that silence, I realized something. No matter the risks, no matter the world outside, this, whatever it was between us, was real. And maybe, just maybe, it was worth the uncertainty. I felt her presence behind me, warm, alive, brushing against my arm as she walked past to the other side of the room. My heart stuttered. The air between us shimmered, heavy with unspoken things. And then, just as suddenly as it had come, it was over. Except it wasn't. Not really. I was helping her organize the shelves in the living room when my phone buzzed, a sharp vibration that felt like an alarm in the quiet. I jumped slightly, and she laughed softly, that warm, airy sound that made my chest tighten. "You're too tense," she said, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Her fingers lingered near my cheek, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her skin. I froze. My own hand hovered midair, unsure whether to move closer or retreat. Then a knock at the door made us both start. My pulse thudded painfully in my ears. I stepped back instinctively, and so did she, the sudden distance making the room feel emptier than it had a second ago. I cursed the interruption. A friend had come to borrow something, and we both waited, pretending normalcy. Our proximity suddenly a liability. When the knock faded and the visitor left, we exhaled almost simultaneously. I noticed her eyes linger on mine, wide and knowing, before a half-smile tugged at her lips. That small smile, subtle but loaded, made the hair on the back of my neck prickle. I wanted to close the space between us, to let my hand brush hers for real, but I didn't. We returned to the shelves. I could feel her behind me as she reached for a stack of books, our arms brushing. My chest pressed subtly against her back, and I could feel her inhale sharply, whether in surprise or anticipation, I didn't know. I tried to focus on the task, but my awareness was consumed by the warmth of her body and the faint scent that seemed to follow her everywhere. "I shouldn't," I started, then stopped. Words felt clumsy, inadequate, unnecessary. She didn't finish for me either. Instead, she leaned closer as if testing the space between us, letting her shoulder touch mine. I wanted to tilt my head, close the final inch, and see if she would meet me halfway. But I didn't. Fear, guilt, hesitation, what others will think, kept me tethered. Our breaths mingled, quiet but distinct, each heartbeat loud in the confined space. Her eyes caught mine in the mirror across the room, and I thought I saw the same pull, the same uncertainty, mirrored in her gaze. Neither of us moved, yet the air between us thrummed with the intensity of what we were not yet willing to name. Finally, she stepped back just slightly, as if granting me a reprieve while also reminding me of what was at stake. I wanted to close the distance again immediately, but reason, or caution, or shame, kept me still. And yet, in that pause, in that tiny, suspended space, something undeniable had shifted. Her hand brushed mine almost by accident, or not, and we both flinched, the contact electric. I could feel the tension coil tighter, pulling us closer, even as every instinct told us to resist. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. We stood there, mere inches apart, the weight of what we weren't saying pressing down on us. And in that silence, I realized we were closer than ever before, bound not by words or actions, but by something far more dangerous, the pull we could no longer ignore. The room was quiet, but every sound felt amplified. The soft tick of the clock, the faint hum of the heater, the uneven rhythm of my own heartbeat. She was standing close, too close, and I couldn't remember the last time a simple presence had felt so heavy, so urgent. I can't. I started, my voice low, trembling, though I wasn't sure what I was trying to say. She didn't respond, just tilted her head slightly, letting a lock of hair fall across her cheek. I reached out instinctively, brushing it back with my fingers. The warmth of her skin against mine was immediate, intoxicating, and I froze, not wanting to ruin the fragile boundary between us. Her eyes met mine then, wide, searching, and something unspoken passed between us. Desire? Fear? I couldn't name it, but it burned through every nerve. I wanted to lean in, to feel the brush of her lips, the whisper of her breath against mine, but the caution I'd carried for weeks kept my body still. I shouldn't feel like this, she murmured, almost to herself. Her hand hovered near mine, fingers twitching, not quite daring to touch. But the way her shoulder brushed mine made me shiver. Every instinct in me wanted to close the distance, to let go of the careful restraint that had governed our interactions. I can't stop thinking about you, I admitted, words spilling out before I could second-guess them. The confession hung heavy in the air. Her eyes widened slightly, a flicker of something, relief, recognition, crossing her face. Her lips parted slightly, a breath caught halfway. You shouldn't, she whispered, but there was no conviction in the words, only hesitation. The tension between us coiled tighter, every heartbeat synchronized, every glance charged. I took a small step closer, and she didn't step back. Her body leaned just a fraction against mine, just enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her, the softness of her hair brushing my temple. My hand trembled slightly as it hovered near her cheek, unsure whether to touch, to pull away, or to risk everything. I don't care, I said, barely audible, my lips close enough that she could feel the vibration of my words against her ear. The words were reckless, dangerous, but true. My chest tightened. I needed her closer. She inhaled sharply, her fingers twitching near my hand. The air between us shimmered with anticipation, electric and suffocating. For a moment, it was just us, nothing else, nothing in the world outside this room. And then she tilted her head up slightly, her gaze locking on mine, lips parted as if inviting something she knew she shouldn't. My breath caught, heart hammering. Every instinct screamed forward, yet every ounce of restraint whispered to stop. The world seemed to hold its breath. I could feel her warmth, smell her, hear the faint intake of her breath. We were on the edge. And just as I leaned in, ready to close the distance, the sharp sound of the front door opening echoed from the hallway. The door had barely closed behind whoever had entered when we both realized how close we were. Too close, yet not close enough. My chest still ached from the near kiss, and her hand lingered near mine, trembling slightly, as if the room itself had caught our secret. I didn't mean for you to hear that, she murmured, voice low, almost choked. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, then back to me, and I realized she was trembling, not from fear, but from something else entirely. Desire, maybe. Anxiety. Something impossible to name. I stepped closer instinctively, and she flinched, brushing past me, our bodies nearly colliding. The air between us buzzed with tension, the warmth of her proximity setting every nerve on fire, even as we both tried to maintain distance. I overheard. I admitted quietly, though the words felt heavy, dangerous. She froze. Her hand paused midair, brushing against the edge of the counter, and I could see her pulse fluttering under her skin. Her lips parted slightly, and for a moment, the room was silent except for our synchronized breathing. And, she asked, though her tone betrayed more curiosity than reproach. Her shoulder brushed mine, almost accidentally, but the sensation sent an electric thrill through me. I don't think I can stop thinking about you, I whispered, my fingers itching to reach for her, but stopping just short. She leaned toward me slightly, letting the space between us shrink, her hair brushing my temple, warmth pressing against my arm. Her eyes softened, then darkened in a way that made my stomach twist. I shouldn't, but I think I've been feeling the same, she confessed, voice barely above a breath. She stepped back immediately afterward, as if to protect herself from the pull of our proximity, yet the movement only made my heart ache more. We stood in the middle of the room, a tension-filled pause stretching between us, neither of us able to look away, neither of us daring to move. The risk had become real. The walls we'd both built were crumbling, replaced by raw, urgent need. I noticed the way her fingers curled slightly, brushing against her own arm as if seeking comfort, and my hand itched to cover hers, to bridge the impossible gap. Every instinct screamed to close the distance, to feel her fully, yet the fear of consequences, what others would think, what we might lose, held me back. Her gaze lingered, heavy and intimate, and the faintest part of a smile touched her lips. "So, what do we do now?" she asked, though the question was rhetorical. Her presence, her nearness, had already answered it in ways neither of us could ignore. I swallowed hard, stepping just a fraction closer, feeling her warmth radiate toward me, our bodies almost touching, and yet still separated by the fragile barrier of hesitation. Every heartbeat, every breath, every micro-movement between us screamed the same thing. We were on the edge. Then, almost involuntarily, she tilted her head slightly, letting her hair fall across her shoulder, and I knew we couldn't wait much longer. The room seemed to shrink around us, the tension unbearable, the pull irresistible. And in that suspended moment, the decision felt inevitable. One step forward, and everything would change. The room seemed smaller now, the world outside irrelevant. Every sound, every flicker of light, every breath felt magnified, charged with a gravity I hadn't known existed. She was so close. I could see the tiny flecks of gold in her eyes, the way her lips quivered ever so slightly, as if mirroring my own restraint. "I don't know if I should," she whispered, her voice low, rough at the edges. Her hand hovered near mine, trembling, fingers curling slightly, seeking something without quite touching. I could feel her warmth radiating toward me, a temptation I no longer had the strength to resist. "I don't want to step back," I admitted, voice barely audible, my chest tight with tension. "Not from you. Not now." My fingers twitched, almost moving toward hers, and the faint brush of her sleeve against my arm sent a jolt straight to my heart. She inhaled sharply, and for a second, we were suspended in the quiet, two people poised on the edge of a choice that would change everything. Her gaze searched mine, not with hesitation now, but with a tentative daring, as if she was asking permission and granting it at the same time. I stepped closer, the air between us almost unbearable, and she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in slightly, just enough for our breaths to mingle, for the faintest warmth of her cheek to brush against mine. My hand rose instinctively, hovering near her jaw, unsure whether to touch, to pull away, or to close the final distance. "You're reckless," she murmured, voice trembling, teasing, but laced with vulnerability. Her fingers brushed my hand lightly, not quite holding, not quite letting go. "And you're patient," I whispered back, voice low, carrying every thought I hadn't dared to say before. The words hung between us, heavy and intimate. She tilted her head slightly, letting her hair fall across her shoulder, the faintest smile touching her lips, a smile that spoke of surrender, of trust, of recognition. We were inches apart now, every heartbeat synchronized, every micromotion amplified. I could feel the pull of her body, the subtle warmth against my own, the electricity in that silent space. Every instinct screamed forward, every thought cautioned restraint, and yet the choice had become clear. I moved slowly, deliberately, letting my hand finally brush against her cheek. She leaned into the touch, closing the gap just enough for our foreheads to touch. The tension collapsed into something fragile and raw, a delicate surrender that felt more human than any kiss could convey. In that suspended moment, clarity arrived, not from words, but from presence. We understood each other fully, the longing, the hesitation, the pull we had fought against for weeks. And for the first time, there was no distance between our desires and our truth. We didn't need to speak. The silence, the closeness, the trembling warmth of our shared space said it all. And in that quiet, electric connection, we both knew one thing with certainty: nothing would ever be the same. The tension that had been building for weeks seemed to settle around us like a gentle weight. The room was quiet, yet it felt alive in a way only moments of true connection can make. She was sitting on the edge of the sofa, legs tucked under her, and I hesitated for a heartbeat before lowering myself beside her. Her hand found mine almost immediately, fingers intertwining without thought, without hesitation. It was effortless, natural, a language we had been learning together, spoken in glances and touches long before words could form. I could feel the warmth of her hand seep into mine, steadying, grounding, a quiet promise that we didn't have to explain everything to know it was real. I was so scared, she whispered, resting her head lightly against my shoulder. The tremor in her voice spoke volumes, of fear, of longing, of everything we had both held back. I felt my chest tighten as I wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close, letting her weight rest against me. "You don't have to be anymore," I murmured. My voice was low, soft, but firm. "I'm not going anywhere." She tilted her head up slightly, and I caught the faintest glint of tears in her eyes. I brushed them away gently with my thumb, careful not to startle her, and she leaned into the touch. Her forehead pressed against mine, a quiet gesture that said more than words ever could. There was no rush, no urgency, just presence, closeness, and the steady rhythm of hearts sinking after weeks of tension. I could feel her breath on my cheek, warm and steady, and the subtle scent of her perfume enveloped me, comforting and intoxicating all at once. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, shoulders touching, fingers intertwined, breaths mingling, until the world outside the room ceased to exist. The age gap, the hesitation, the fear of judgment, all of it had faded into irrelevance. In this moment, it didn't matter. All that mattered was the honesty of our presence, the intimacy of simply being together. I held her just a little tighter, and she nestled closer, letting herself be seen, let herself trust. "I never thought it could feel like this," she whispered, voice soft, almost in awe. "Neither did I admitted, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. "But here we are." Her hand squeezed mine, a quiet affirmation. I leaned back slightly so we could sit side by side, shoulders brushing, fingers still laced. No grand declarations were needed. We had reached a place of understanding, of acceptance, of quiet, messy, human intimacy. We stayed there in the soft light, the room humming with our shared warmth, letting the silence speak for us. And finally, I realized that this closeness, this understanding, this surrender, was all either of us had ever wanted. The moment felt infinite and yet complete. For the first time, there was no fear, no hesitation. Just us,